we do is we look at the level of their risk, and then from there, we can create an individualized care plan that is specific to their needs, specific to their risk. We use those numbers to help us formulate what interventions and what type of care we're going to plan for the resident.
Hey out there, everybody. Welcome back to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. My name is Rob. I will be your host for this particular episode. Today, we are talking about assessing an individual's resident's risk for developing pressure injuries. Specifically, we really get into the Braden scale, how the Braden scale, the data goes in, spits out a number, and then from the number you get interventions. But we're not doing that alone. We have an absolutely fantastic guest today, and that is Brenda Johnson. So she's going to be sharing her knowledge with us about assessing pressure injury risk in long-term care. But before we get into all that, it is time for the nursing home regulation question of the week and another opportunity for you to win a Nursing Home Abuse Podcast coffee mug. It is the perfect way to ingest your morning coffee. How to win, you might ask? It's extremely convoluted. First, you head over to our TikTok page, our TikTok webpage. Is that how you say it? I don't know. Go to our TikTok at Justice for Residents and find the video that has a picture of the Millennium Falcon. That is the spaceship that Captain Han Solo piloted in the Star Wars movies. So find that thumbnail and then put your answer to this week's question of the week there, along with your favorite movie genre. So is it science fiction like it is for me? Or is it fantasy? Is it romance, comedy? Put your answer there. And we will post a new question every Monday. Winners will be revealed every Sunday on TikTok and on our website, which is schenkfirm.com/podcast/giveaway, I think. And prizes will be shipped at the end of the month. So good luck to you. I hope that you win. I hope we're all winners, but I hope you win this coffee mug. Difficulty level this week, folks, I'm going to say is medium to medium hard. If you get this right, give yourself 2 pats on the back. Under 42 CFR 483.45, under what conditions may unlicensed personnel administer medications in a nursing home? Is it A, for over-the-counter medications only, B, if permitted by state law and under the general supervision of a licensed nurse, or C, upon approval of the resident or resident representative? And that answer is B. An unlicensed individual in a nursing home can provide medications only if it is allowable under the law of the state in which the nursing home is in, and if a registered nurse is providing oversight. All right, now it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of the episode. This week, as I mentioned, we have the fantastic Brenda Johnson joining us. Brenda has 12 years of diverse nursing experience from corrections to wound care. In 2022, she founded Sustainable Legal Nurse Consulting, assisting attorneys with personal injury, nursing home negligence, and medical malpractice cases. Passionate about patient advocacy, she brings medical expertise to the legal field. Originally from South Texas, Brenda now lives in Oklahoma with her husband, dogs, horses, and chickens. She enjoys cooking Mexican meals, dance, fitness, and true crime shows, and we are so happy to have her on the show this week. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Brenda, I'm going to give you a softball question here, and that is, how do we assess an individual resident for their risk of pressure injury?
That's a great question. So one of the first ways we assess a resident for pressure injury prevention is using a standardized tool like the Braden scale or the Norton scale is the first thing that comes to mind. So that's a targeted risk assessment. So the Braden scale, for example, it'll consist of 6 categories. So we look into the residents' mobility and activity, their sensory perception, nutritional status, and friction and shear in bed. So we score that. The lower the score, the higher the risk. The Norton scale is similar. The difference with that one is it will look into the resident's cognitive ability. So that's a difference there because that's also important when it comes to pressure injury prevention. So these tools are just a very good, systematic, standardized way to quickly assess their risk.
Do if a nursing home uses the Braden scale or the Braden assessment, do they in turn not use the Norton, or are they do you find that they're using both, or one or the other?
In my experience, I have usually found that it's either one or the other. So the one that I'm most experienced with is the Braden scale. So in reviewing records, medical records, nursing home charts, I find that the more common one is the Braden scale.
So let's talk from a general perspective. What are those factors in the Braden scale, for example? Like what are you looking at? Like, for example, when you're talking about cognitive capacity, like what are some of the things that you're looking at that would then translate into interventions?
Oh, okay, great. So, in regards to cognitive status or cognitive ability, what we look at is the resident able to articulate their needs, right? So are they cognitively intact to state, I'm in pain, I'm uncomfortable, I need help moving in bed? So patients may be with cognitive impairment due to a stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's disease. We really want to hone in on their abilities or inabilities so that then we can intervene and figure out, okay, so this patient can't really verbalize or tell us their physical needs or needs in general, but in this context related to, let's say, moving around in their chair or in their bed. So we look at that and then we can figure out, oh, okay, well, this resident has, moderately impaired cognition due to dementia. So we want to make sure that maybe we're providing prompting, regular uh, check-ins to go in and say, hey, it's time to reposition you in bed or let's get you in your chair. Interventions like that would assist the resident in with the verbalization of their needs.
How and so kind of like a two for question here. So typically in your experience, how long does the Braden assessment last? Like you walk into the room, there's the resident, you're gonna do the Braden assessment. How long are you in that room doing it?
Okay. Well, that kind of depends too. So if it's the first time, if the resident is at its day one on admission to the facility, right, we're going to do a more in the weeds comprehensive initial evaluation, right? And then a component of that would be the Braden scale, for example. So it can take, when we're admitting a resident to the facility, it's going to be a while because we're looking at everything. So it could be maybe 20, 30 minutes, maybe a whole hour that we're in there, but for the comprehensive eval, but the scale itself
Mhm.
can take, a few minutes, depending on the level of care that the resident, is requiring or just their comorbidities, just whatever the patient or the resident has going on. So to answer your question, the scale itself as a sole tool that we're like in the room to do, it may take several minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Can you walk us through just in general? Like, let's just imagine in our heads. Let's play pretend. What are you doing during that time? Like, what are the like if you're going to do the Braden scale? Um, just kind of walk us through that process.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm in there and, I have my little Braden scale or my computer there with the resident. So the first thing I'm going to look at is their sensory perception. So asking the resident, are you able to feel pain, discomfort? Are you able to, have feelings? Do you have a history of maybe some nerve impairment, muscle impairment, anything that's going to affect their senses, the ability to feel discomfort and pain. So I'll look at that. I'll also compare what they're telling me with maybe their medical conditions. So, like diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, any spinal cord injuries, things like that. Then I go into mobility and activity. So I assess how is the resident able to move independently in bed, or they're rolling, they're getting up from laying to a sitting position, then standing. Can they do that independently? If not, do they require assistance? If so, what is the level of assistance that they require? Do they need assistive devices like a walker, wheelchair, a lift sheet, a mechanical lift? So there's so much involved. Activity, what's their ambulatory status? Are they able to walk? How often do they walk? So that movement is really assessing. We're comparing what the patient can do while in bed and while out of bed, because the longer they're in bed, the longer they're in a chair, the risk goes up for pressure injuries. Then I look at bowel and bladder or moisture. Are they continent? Are they incontinent? If they're incontinent, okay, then we need to figure out uh, keeping the skin clean and dry, barrier creams, brief toileting, a toileting schedule. So to really minimize that risk or the time that the patient is going to be either wet or soiled. We don't want that because that impairs their skin integrity and increases their risk of developing wounds in the peri area. Then I go into nutritional status. So their weight, do they have any other conditions that are affecting their nutrition? So recent infections, recent surgeries, diabetes is always a big one. Are they coming in already, malnourished, or they're lacking protein? Look at that. What is their appetite like? What diet are they on? And then again, friction and shear. So figuring out how we're going to help them with that constant rubbing against surfaces, whether they're in bed or in a chair, and then the shearing forces that can cause skin tears as we slide the sheets and they're moving around in bed. That friction and that shearing can really damage the skin.
So you've gone head to toe with the resident. You've gone through these categories and you've input all this data. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, what happens? Like is there a number that's assigned?
Yes, yes, it's a scale. So uh, they each of these categories, so mobility, activity, the sensory, the moisture, nutrition, and friction and shear, we assign like 1 to 4 points according to what they answer, and then we tally the total score, and the scale gives us a low risk, a mild, moderate, and then high risk. So the lower they score on the scale, the higher the risk they have for the development of pressure injuries.
All right. So you've input all the data. Boop, 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 boop. We get a number. Lower the number, the higher the risk. The higher the number, the lower the risk. We'll talk to Miss Braden about why that's the case. But how do we get, Brenda, from a number to what actually should be done for this specific resident?
I love that question because the number, it is a number, right? So as the providers or the nurses there that are doing the assessment, we want to look at the number, but we also don't want to put all of our value or all of our trust in just the number, right? So because we're the ones that are physically looking at the resident head to toe, comparing all of our data with how they scored. But typically, what we do is we look at the level of their risk, and then from there, we can create an individualized care plan that is specific to their needs, specific to their risks. So we use those numbers to help us formulate what interventions and what type of care we're going to plan for the resident.
Okay, so now we have the number, we have their level of risk, we have interventions that we've decided based on the level of risk. How often is that happening? Like, is this something that's twice a shift, once a week? How often are you doing this process typically?
Mhm. Typically, so it's an ongoing process. I mean, we are our nurse assistants, the LPNs or LVNs, and the RNs. We are constantly, should be constantly assessing as part of our daily care throughout our shift. So what that includes is we go in anytime we're toileting, anytime we're doing brief changes, peri-care or incontinent care, dressing and grooming, OT, if they're getting therapy and the occupational therapist is in there and they help them with dressing, bathing, and grooming, they're also part of the team that can help assess skin. And so it should be a constant, ongoing daily evaluation of their skin integrity and monitoring for any skin impairment, any changes to the skin. Now, backtracking from that, we always do the initial assessment, what they are at baseline. So, did they come to the facility with clean, dry, and intact skin? Yes, right. And then 2 weeks later, they have a skin tear. So we note that and we go back to the drawing board and try to figure out, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What do we need to do now to prevent that from getting worse? So we have our initial assessment, our daily ongoing monitoring and evaluation. And then a lot of facilities will have weekly skin checks in place that nursing will document and chart on. And sometimes for our very high risk patients or patients that already have wounds, it may require daily on a daily basis because it for the resident that already has a wound and they're getting daily dressing changes, then it's a daily thing that we are looking into.
Some of that I would love to get your opinion on is and again we're talking about the Braden scale, and you have these categories, and then you have the characteristics for each of these categories that spit out an individual number. How much discretion do you have? Like, how much discretion do you as a professional have, or is it just literally like if X then Y, if one then two, like, or is it are you using more of your brain power? Like, I get that's a dumb question. Like, I feel like how much do you feel like you're acting as a nurse versus just like data goes in and it spits out an integer?
Right. Yes, I love that question because what this reminds me of is, in nursing school, where one of the things we're taught is utilizing our nursing judgment, right? We want to have good judgment. So these are just tools. These are tools that were created by, very intelligent people, experienced people that create these scales and these tools for us to utilize. So it is very helpful for us to be like a sounding board or a good jumping ground towards helping us really figure out the patient specific needs. So personally, just in my experience, when I use a Braden scale and they score, we were talking about this earlier, a low risk, right? Low risk on the scale. But then I look at the patient or the resident, excuse me, then I want to utilize my judgment, and all nurses want to utilize their nursing judgment and their experience to say, well, you know Miss Doe is scoring low as far as pressure injury, but she has these risks. So we want to be able to balance both out and not just say, oh well, they're low risk, we're not going to plan any interventions. We wouldn't want to do something like that.
All right. So again, taking us to the scene. You've done the assessment. You've crunched the number, and there's interventions based on the number. What are some of those interventions, and are there any interventions that seem to occur more often than other ones?
Thank you for asking that, because I feel like sometimes uh people that aren't in the know, right? We do plan. We do plan, and that's the whole point of the care plan. So some of the interventions that, again, moisture, for example, and if we're incontinence care, we're going to plan uh, routine toileting checks, barrier cream, frequent brief changes if they're incontinent, anything that's going to keep the skin clean and dry. We're going to plan those things to help that, right? Immobility, if they're bed bound, this is a big one. If they're bed bound or if they have weakness on one side of the body or other because of a stroke, then it is crucial that we plan a turning and repositioning program that is consistent, routine, systematic, nicely laid out, in my perfect world of care planning, in the care plan, so all care team members are aware, so that we can redistribute that pressure and offload that pressure from the more high prone areas like the sacrum, the elbows, the heels, hips, even the back of the knees sometimes. So a turning and repositioning program is another big intervention that should be in place for our really high risk patients. Low air loss mattress, heel protectors, elbow protectors. Those are all examples of interventions. One of mine that I feel my experience that when I'm reviewing records for nursing home cases is the nutritional interventions. In my experience so far, I feel sometimes is lacking. Nutrition is huge, hydration. So are they on a multivitamin? If it's safe for the patient, right? So, with medications, what medications are they on that are going to impair wound healing? Like maybe some blood thinners or and maybe some antibiotics or something like that. So we want to counteract that with really good quality nutrition and maybe supplements, protein, multivitamin, vitamin C, zinc, anything to really amp up that wound healing and stack things in the resident's favor so that we can help them prevent it completely or improve the healing process, if they do develop a wound. So nutrition is a big one that I like to see as far as interventions.
It used to be in Wheel of Fortune when you were on the final puzzle, like it was just you and Pat Sajak, and they would say, "Hey, what letters do you want?" And you started from scratch. Okay, so like but after I guess 30 years, they realized that everybody was picking R, S, T, L, and N and E, right? So then they started just giving those to you, right? So then you picked an additional, I think 3 or 4 letters of it. I mean, that's how it works now, I think. But I feel like that's how it works now. It's like it's person centered, but if the individual is a high risk, it's almost always going to be the case that there should be an offloading program. That's your RSTLNE on the Wheel of Fortune. That's a really roundabout, very robust analogy, but I think it's fitting there. But anyway, sorry, I digress again. Well, Brenda, that was fantastic. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Oh, I really appreciate you inviting me and asking me to be on this. I enjoyed it. I had fun. It was a nice conversation, and I just really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, folks, I hope that you found this episode educational. I know that I did. If you have an idea for a topic that you would like for me to cover, please let me know. If you have an idea for a guest that you would like for me to talk to, please let me know that as well. New episodes of the Nursing Home Abuse podcast come out every single Monday, hopefully, knock on wood. And with that, folks, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse podcast. Nothing said on this podcast, either by the host or the guest, should be construed as legal or medical advice, nor is intended to create an attorney-client relationship between the host or their guest and the listener. New episodes for now are available every other Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on your favorite podcast app, as well as on YouTube and our website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. Again, that's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.